Most of us learn game development through YouTube videos or Udemy courses, and you might think that books are obsolete in this day and age for learning how to make games. Of course, video content is great and can be your main method of study. However, books will often be better at teaching you advanced concepts or specific expert level knowledge. In this case, I will introduce you to my personal favorite game dev books that helped me level up immensely, and also talk a bit about the ones I often see mentioned but haven't gotten around reading yet. We're gonna cover a wide array of topics, and no matter if you're a game designer, programmer, or artist, I'm pretty sure you'll find some good recommendations here. At the very end, I'm also gonna give you some of my special recommendations that are a bit unconventional and might surprise you. The first book I want to talk about is an amazing ebook called Pixel Logic, and this one actually kicked off my reading habit and showed me why books are so important. Pixel Logic is a 240-page in-depth tutorial about pixel art focusing on visual learning. And it uses many sprites from games we all know and love as examples, which made this extremely fun to swipe through. Of course, when it comes to pixel art, there are many great YouTube tutorials, but being able to read about it on the go and having the ability to easily take notes and place bookmarks drastically increased my motivation and my pace of learning. This book covers pretty much everything you'd need to know, from the basics all the way up to advanced topics such as subpixeling. It was written by Micha Frar, who did amazing pixel art for games such as Wargroove and Cassette Beasts, so he definitely knows what he's talking about. If you want to check out this ebook, it's very affordable and there's a link in the description for you. Staying on the topic of art, looking at art books of games in the same genre as yours can also be very effective. This is a Street Fighter art book I picked up at a small event a couple of years ago. And outside of just artwork, these will often also include snippets of game design documents or other in-depth information about their development process. In this case, it even has a frame-by-frame breakdown of iconic special moves such as the Shoryuken, which was a very useful reference when adding frames of special moves to my own beat-em up. So if there's an art book of whatever game is a leader in your genre, make sure to check it out and see if there's any valuable information in there you could apply to your own game. Let's get into the next big topic, which is game AI behavior. Creating AI behavior for the NPCs in your game is a really challenging task, and something many people get stuck at. Something I got stuck at for a long time. The problem is that if you look up Unreal Engine AI, for example, these videos or articles will show you which buttons you have to press step by step, but they won't really teach you the underlying fundamentals or way of thinking that is necessary to create compelling AI behavior. I have read a couple of books about AI, but the best book series by far is Game AI Pro by Stephen Rabin. I picked this up in the game architecture package from Humble Bundle a while ago, and just as a side note, keeping tabs on book bundles like this can be a cheap way to bolster your library. But the 3 volumes of Game AI Pro are also all available for free on the official website. What's great about these books is that every chapter stands on its own and you don't have to read them in order to understand what's going on. This allows these books to be written not just by a single person, but invites game AI professionals from titles such as The Last of Us, Fear, Assassin's Creed, and many other well-known games to share their rich knowledge on specific topics. I especially love the chapter of behavior selection algorithms since it covers a lot of the fundamentals. This chapter introduces the differences between finite state machines, behavior trees, goal-oriented action planners, and so on. This was very eye-opening since with Unreal Engine the de facto way of doing things is through behavior trees, even though in many situations there are simpler and better solutions. Another great chapter was called Beyond the Kung Fu Circle, and it goes into how to manage NPC attack patterns. It offers very interesting and robust solutions to deciding how your enemies should approach and attack the player, which is something I'm looking to improve when it comes to my own games and what I teach in my tutorials. All in all, I think this is hands down the best collection of game AI wisdom. Another genre of books that can help you grow as a game developer are development diaries, or books that give you a behind-the-scenes look of how some successful games have been created. And one of the best books in this category which I've read is The WoW Diary by John Statz. John was a level designer on World of Warcraft and built more than half of vanilla WoW's dungeons and raids. During his 4 years of working on the game, he started taking notes and interviewing his colleagues about their areas of expertise. It highlights technical decisions they had to make about their game engine and development tools, gives some insights into the problem they had with the pathfinding system, for example, and also shows creative ways designers used to work around programmers being too busy to build advanced tools for some aspects of the game. All of these things could help you figure out better solutions for your game, but at the very least it will show you how hard game development is even for experienced professionals and that you're not alone in this. After finishing the WoW Diary, I was itching for more and found a series called Boss Fight Books. But since each of these books is written by a different author, the style and quality will vary drastically. The first one I read was Spelunky by Derek Yu. Derek Yu is not just an author, but also the actual lead developer of this game, and this was an amazing read giving a full behind-the-scenes look. It gives a lot of insight on Derek's creative process and game design philosophy that allowed him to create one of the first indie games to succeed on Xbox Live Arcade. At the time, the indie game scene was still in its infancy, so it's very interesting to see how it evolved over these years. Another book in the series I checked out is Super Mario Bros. 3 by Alice Knorr, and this is much more an analysis of the game industry at the time and a historical overview of how Mario 3 came to be. I still found it quite interesting, but it offered a lot less advice which can be practically applied. So like I said before, with boss fight books, it's a bit of a mixed bag and it depends on what you're looking for. Let's talk about game design next. As The Art of Game Design, a book of lenses puts it, game design is the act of deciding what a game should be. And that sounds very simple, but there's actually a lot to it, and the following books can help you develop a game designer's mindset. The 3 books that always come up as recommendations are A Theory of Fun, Level Up, The Guide to Great Video Game Design, and The Art of Game Design, a book of lenses. The first one I read was A Theory of Fun, and rather than going to specific genres or giving advice specific to video games, this gives a very high level and abstract overview of what games even are and what mindset we need to adapt to make our games fun. And The Art of Game Design, a book of lenses, is also similar to this and could be applied to board games just as much as it could be applied to video games. Level Up, The Guide to Great Video Game Design, on the other hand, talks specifically about video games and even gets into topics such as camera, controls, UI design, and much more. So if you want something that is less abstract and more practical, this is probably the right one for you. A big part of designing games is coming up with characters and building a cohesive world. Of course, you could think up something completely original, but this is extremely hard to do and most players will prefer a setting they are familiar with to some degree. That's why a lot of games take inspiration from different mythologies from all over the world. God of War Ragnarok, for example, is of course based on Norse mythology, and a lot of the characters and story elements are derived from these ancient stories that have been told for thousands of years. While playing the game, my curiosity for Norse mythology kept growing stronger and stronger, and I picked up a book by Neil Gaiman just called Norse Mythology. This is a collection of the most important stories about Thor, Loki, Odin, and many other deities. And since all of these story elements and characters are basically public domain, you could use them in your own game as is, or at least take some inspiration from them. One of my game ideas that's still in an early stage takes place in the Edo period in Japan, so I picked up 2 books to help me do research and give me some inspiration. The first one is a collection of Japanese monsters or yokai, and this will be a great reference for enemies or boss fights. And the second book is about Japanese deities such as Amaterasu and will also play an important role. Another popular setting for games is of course Greek mythology, and games such as Assassin's Creed Odyssey or Hades make great use of these stories and characters, while also putting their own spin on it. But all around the world there are many more different types of mythologies and folklore which might be a good fit for your game that you can learn about in many other books. Now lastly, let's get into some of my special recommendations. The next book is a complete compendium on real-time 3D graphics, and having only read about 30% of it so far, I already feel like I got my money's worth, and learned a ton about the minute details of how 3D rendering works. There's one problem with it though, it's only available in Japanese. I've watched many videos before on how ray tracing works or normal maps, but none of them were able to explain it as well as this book did. And it actually uses Unreal Engine as an example for how many of these things are implemented quite frequently. So if you happen to know Japanese, I definitely recommend that you check out this book. But I also found an English book which seems to cover similar topics and is also highly rated. This book is called Real-Time Rendering 4th edition and might be a good replacement if you're looking for something in English. Lastly, I also want to mention that there are many books that aren't specifically about game development, but will still make you a much better game developer. Making games requires a lot of time and effort, and it can be extremely hard to stay motivated and keep working on your game day by day. Something that is very important is to understand the power of habits and how you can create an environment that will foster positive habits and make you a lot more productive. The power of habit will give you a high-level understanding of how habits are formed and tell some stories to display how powerful habits can be and the positive or negative impact they can have on our lives. Atomic Habits, on the other hand, is a lot more practical and teaches you how you can build up small, positive habits without a lot of time investment or effort that will have a huge impact over time. And that's about it. I hope you found at least a couple of books I mentioned interesting and will pick up the habit of reading at least a couple of minutes every day. If you have any great book suggestions for game developers, please let me know in the comments since I'd love to check them out. As always, thanks to my awesome patrons.